college enrollment. It's a decision that a lot of graduating seniors have to make coming out of high school. And I've had this discussion with my own son. He chose to go into the military. That was his choice. But the cost of college has been skyrocketing for decades now, and it's been a vicious cycle. And it needs to be brought to the forefront. And now that the staggering amount of student loan debt, some say it could really cripple the economy. This could be another housing crisis, all rolled up into one. Joining us to help us understand how serious the problem is David Wilezol. He's the co-author of the book, Is College Worth It? He wrote it with Bill Bennett, who we've had on the program as well. David, welcome. This is an important topic. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, I'm really glad to be here, David.
David, David, I look at this topic and I'm frightened by it because I just feel that there are too many kids going to school feeling that it's almost a guarantee to get a job. And what I like about your book, it forces you to really question the conventional wisdom that every student, in fact, should go to college. Walk us through the book.
Yeah, well, the thesis of the book is not don't go to college. It's, we want kids to understand the fact that, if you're going to go run out and try and get a bachelor's degree, good earnings and all that accompany your career afterward are dependent on where you go to college, what you study, how much you borrow, and what kind of person you are academically and intellectually. Do you have the aptitude and the inclination to do it? So I think there's a lot in there that kids and parents are going to take away. That's why that was a big motivation for why I wrote it. As somebody who does have a good bit of student loan debt.
I'm glad you mentioned the debt, because one of the trends that you point out that I found particularly troublesome was that in recent years, consumer debt has actually been declining, but student loan debt is going through the roof. Right.
Well, that's because tuition keeps climbing. I actually was talking to the president of a private university the other day, and he and I were talking about this story in the New York Times, actually, where there's declining enrollment at a lot of private colleges. Well, people, I think, are starting to realize that, it's not necessarily what is taught in class that's the premium to a college education. It's having that piece of paper that says, I graduated college. And when people start to realize that the product is generally really similar at a lot of places, they're not going to be willing to shell out for as much money for an education that's quote unquote, more prestigious, at one school over another. They're going to start to look for more value.
One of the things when I was talking to Bill about the book, pointed out that perhaps if you're getting into Stanford, it makes sense to go. Here's the issue that I've always had, is that so many of our young people, you come out of high school, maybe you're not sure what you want to be. You maybe just need a little time to think it out. And sure, if you know you want to be an electrical engineer, by all means you should go to school. But what bothers me is so many kids go to school going for that liberal arts education, and they're going to find themselves. It's a very costly place to do that.
Yeah, and you hit on the head. College, I think a college campus these days for a lot of kids, it's kind of the de facto place for adult, identity formation. Well, people became productive adults and citizens in society when only 5% or 1% of the population was going to college, So I think you're absolutely right about that. And there's a lot of students who are studying things or, fall in love with subjects which, intrinsically they have plenty of good value and plenty of merit to them. I mean, Bill and I both have graduate degrees in the liberal arts. But a lot of kids are running out to study this stuff or study, psychology or communications. And again, it's not anything essentially wrong with those things, but they need to have the right ideas about what their return on investment is going to produce in terms of being able to get hired and being able to make money.
One of the things that you expose, or the two of you expose so well in this book, is how the cost of college has risen through decades, and it was frightening. It was really an indictment of the system. Walk us through how all this cheap money and the fact that government helps students out, there's a downside to that.
Yeah. So as you know, it's really easy to get student loans from the government. If you're a student who's enrolled at a school, it's basically pretty easy to get a student loan. Well, what happens is the universities see this and they say, okay, we have a backstop for revenue here. You know, if we raise revenue, the government isn't going to cut off money. They're going to allow students to keep borrowing. So the colleges like to build expensive, fancy dorms and cafeterias and stuff like that. You know, they like to hire star faculty who do their own research and don't teach students. You know, they like to make nice floral arrangements on the campuses and things like that to try and compete with one another, to make it a nice place to seem to go. But all that cost gets passed on to the students in the form of tuition increases, and they're able to do that because they know there's an unending money spigot in the form of federal student loans behind all that.
So if I think I'm right in this, but correct me if I'm wrong, so that by the money being so cheap, and actually cheap isn't the right word to put it. I guess the money being so available, the students know they can get the money, that the faculty, the schools, the administrators of these schools understand that. They just hike up the rates, knowing that the kids can still get the money. It's a spiral only upward.
Right. So it has to, and as you know, since 1978, tuition has increased like 1,100% or something like that. There's a quote.
Do you have any idea? Let me just break in. What does that work out to on an annual basis?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what it would be on an annual basis, but I mean, let's take this. I mean, if you talk to people who graduated in the 70s, they'll routinely tell you, even through the early 80s, they'll routinely tell you, oh, my tuition was, $500, $800 a semester or something like that. I mean, even through, in the mid 90s, it was getting to be around, $7,000, $8,000 a semester for a private school education, and now it's in the mid 30s. So you can kind of get a sense from that, I think.
When I talk to business leaders out there, especially CEOs in the manufacturing industry, we're obviously in this country, we're looking to improve the job situation. We just had a jobs number today that wasn't all that exciting. It was a little disappointing. But there are apparently a lot of jobs out there that are not necessarily, for those that are college bound. They say they need qualified, really well-schooled individuals for some of these jobs, and some figures have it out there. There are hundreds of thousands of jobs like this, but it requires maybe more like an apprenticeship. Why aren't students going that route?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I think I think for one thing, we've kind of looked down on anything less than a college degree, in terms of educational attainment, and we've kind of said, all right, if you work with your hands for a living, this is dumb, dirty, or dangerous work. Well, let me tell you. I'm a journalist, and I work with Bill Bennett, and that's great. But I know that a lot of these guys who are talented plumbers, electricians, utility linemen, welders, things like that, I know they're making more money than I am. There's a big number of jobs out there which are skilled labor jobs which are going unfilled. And so I think for a lot of people who aren't sure what they want to do, maybe they're kind of honest with themselves and realize they don't particularly enjoy or are good at, school. That's a path that's worth exploring because the country needs those jobs, and a lot of the men and women doing those jobs these days are getting ready to retire. It's
not even necessarily dirty hands work. Some of the jobs they point out require a certain amount of computer skills and machinery skills. This is high-tech machinery we're talking about. It's going to take a while to learn it, but it's a real skill with a real future. And not everybody is going to. You're not coming out with a liberal arts education. What are you really trained for with a liberal arts education? Now you've got to go to graduate school, and now the cost really gets up there.
Yeah, that's where people get into trouble a lot of the time with debt is liberal arts graduate school. Coming back to the other point, 1 in 10 jobs in this country is a sub-bachelor's degree STEM job: science, technology, engineering, and math. And those jobs pay a median of $53,000 a year. So that's an associate's degree maybe in computer science or some technical discipline like that. So there's good economic prospects out there. It's unfortunate that we haven't recognized the encourage more kids to go that route.
Some in Congress are starting to recognize the problem. We've only got a short time, and I want to focus on this for a second. Senators Ron Wyden and Marco Rubio, they introduced a bill called Know Before You Go, because what happens to a lot of students, they go to these colleges, they rack up all this debt, and the evidence was out there long before they even went in there that the job prospects were far less than what they were being told.
Yeah. I think in this case, sunlight is the best disinfectant, is what the Chief Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes used to say. And I think there's a lot of people who didn't realize what they were getting into, realizing that, if I borrow $60,000 and study sociology, that I don't think they realized that was going to be a negative value proposition.
Wow.
But now, this Know Before You Go Act, I think Bill and I both think it's a really good thing. It's kind of like the mortgage crisis that we had a couple years ago. A lot of people just didn't understand that they were trying to do things that were beyond their means. But I think this is a good, really, really good and politically easy first step to help solve the problem.
Well, David, congratulations on the book. It's an important read. I would encourage every college-bound student to read this. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks very much, David. I really liked it.
That, of course, was David Wilezol. He's co-author of the book, Is College Worth It? And kids, I got to tell you, think about it. Think about it. If you know what you want to do and you're certain as to what your future is going to be and the profession you want to go to, that you want to get into, and it requires a college education, go for it. But if you're going for a liberal arts degree and you think you're going to find yourself in the next 4 years, don't waste your time. Go get a job. That's probably the best thing you could do. Find your